What is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Greetings and welcome again to a Sunday of Buffer Time. Buffer Timers, before we get into In the Pale Moonlight, we'll go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
My name is Scott from the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
I am she without a name. I am she who is called I am. My name is Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
Well, unfortunately, the without a name thing does lead us into one of the big pieces of news we unfortunately have to talk about. Actor Kenneth Mitchell, dead at 49, passed away yesterday. One of his roles was Son of None from Discovery. He actually played 3 different Klingons on Discovery. Cole, who Burnham defeated and took Georgiou's badge back from. Another one that I'm not actually sure where he is, but he did that Klingon, and Tenavik that walked Pike through the time crystals. He also, what I didn't know was, he played a few different characters in the Lower Decks episode Veritas from the first season. But his most recognizable episode is probably episodes towards the end of season 3 where he plays Aurelio here. So quite a lengthy history in New Trek for this actor, and he will be missed.
I saw that Will Shatner posted something about how he was exchanging DMs with him and they had a good rapport, and he will miss him.
Good.
I feel like since he played 3 Klingons, we have to do... We'll miss you, Caddy.
Nice.
So, some of the other little bits of news. We finally got a trailer and a solid date for Discovery, April 4th, coming back with their 5th and final season. There's all kinds of rumors and speculation out there. There's you can see a Mirror Universe badge in the background of the trailer, and some people have surmised that this repeating writing in the promotion graphic means Kirk or some 4-letter thing. So it's going to be interesting. I think we're in for some twists and turns, and for a final season, I think we need that.
I'm incredibly hopeful.
Sure, why not?
I'm sad that the Mirrorverse portion of Discovery is sort of a non-thing, because that to me was the best part. But I am curious to see how this wraps up, because they've been sort of stopping. Each season was sort of okay, that's the end of that story. We're just going to have to pretend none of that happened and move on. So how are they going to wrap this up to make it all kind of work together?
Yeah, we'll definitely do a whole episode the week before Discovery airs and talk about, what we like about what's happened, what we expect, and what we probably need out of a final season of Discovery, coming up at the last week of March. Was there any other news that you guys know of that I might have missed?
Legacy, is it a movie or is it a series?
As far as I know, it hasn't been confirmed.
Oh, I see. The Section 31 show?
Maybe that's what you're thinking of. Yeah, that's being filmed right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so on to In the Pale Moonlight. Is this, I don't want to ask this question as a question, but is this the best episode of Trek of all time? As far as an actual question I want to ask.
You seem to think so.
I do, and a lot of other people do, even though I guess what we could start with then is, can an episode that's nearly the antithesis of Gene Roddenberry's original vision be the franchise's best?
Are you I guess it could you define how that I guess I'm sort of like the premise of the question is that it's the antithesis of Gene Roddenberry's vision. Can you explain a little bit like background
Like,
why that
what
is?
exactly does it mean?
Well, just how dark the episode is. There's interpersonal conflict, stuff that Roddenberry wasn't big on, and kind of walks away from that hopeful message that we can evolve and and we've moved past these, like, this need to basically do what Cisco does in the episode.
Right. I guess like within TOS itself, I see Kirk occasionally running into problems where he has to make a difficult choice. So I think with this, um, what they're doing, I don't necessarily like to think of Star Trek in the binary of like would or wouldn't Gene Roddenberry want to do this necessarily. I think within the context of DS9
Right.
specifically, that this was a necessary episode because in order to make the sort of snap decisions that you would have to in a war time, you would have to sort of do things that are over the line. And what goes behind those decisions is really important to focus on. And because we don't usually hear the truth behind certain pivotal moments in history, we sort of are given the cliff notes, we were given the hero's arc, but we're not told like the sacrifices that were necessary in order to overcome certain things. And in this case, it was like the Romulan bringing that ally in. And in TOS itself, like the Romulans were just sort of like unknown, but understood to be never going to be an ally. They're behind neutral zone. So I guess in terms of like the vision of like a hopeful future, that what even Gene Roddenberry I think would concede that there are dark times in prosperous uh, the prosperous federation. We just sort of hear it in exposition versus like in front of our face. And DS9 gives us an up close and personal view of what those difficult decisions in real time would look like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is fair. I mean, like the whole series in itself, if like I've been summing stuff up, right? So if I was going to sum up DS9, it'd probably be the Dominion War, and they really went out of their way to explain all or to develop all the aspects of the war, good or bad, whether it's like Vanessa says, we're only hearing really from the winners because history books tend to be written by the winners. You don't know about all the little stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And nobody's going to know about this because Cisco deleted his log. But yeah, if you're going to do an overarching war storyline, then it does kind of seem like some stuff like this would have happened.
Also,
Yeah,
TOS sometimes would focus on things like self-sacrifice in the planet-eating episode, or they showed war, but in a sort of abstract way with that one episode where they were killing like entire sections of people based on computer printouts. So it's like there's those ethical things are there, but they don't quite get this up close and personal with the difficult decisions that take place during wartime.
yeah, it definitely
That's true.
is it's a very different episode for Star Trek. Is I guess what I meant with this question to begin with. There's no it's a good thing and ends justify the means type thing, but at the same time, it goes very much against almost everything we've seen about Starfleet and what their ideals are up to this point. But at the same time, I think that's what makes it great, because there's been so many light episodes of Star Trek over the years. To get this really like dark yet all gray area episode is it's really nice and refreshing.
When the Borg thing happens in TNG and when the Dominion War happens, I think what is beginning is an aeon of conflict that people in the Federation don't have in their working memory. They're not used to this scale of aggression and having to respond to it. So there's layers to this, I think. Like, because Cisco is having to face what is sort of as a captain in Starfleet, he is a symbol, a figurehead of of Federation principles. It for the uniform is also another episode that sort of goes in this direction, but at the same time, it's like he's having to make a decision that may not be the one that I agree with, but in the context of wartime, it makes sense. Like, there's a logic there. But at the same time, it's like, it's not the diplomatic option. It's not the kind, squishy, let's bring everybody together, unite everyone under one flag kind of thing. It's like we have to defend ourselves in a way we've never had to, on a scale we've never had to, because it's like, first they were like, oh, this could be anybody. This could be anybody because they're shapeshifters. They're putting themselves in positions of power. And then, like, suddenly they have the Jem'Hadar coming at them. It's like this multi-wave of a type of aggression that they're just simply not equipped to handle. And suddenly Cisco is at a very key position of having to convince the Romulans to ally with them. So I don't envy him.
So I guess that begs the ultimate question: do the ends justify the means in this episode?
I think Garrick put it pretty simply. That you basically saved the Alpha Quadrant, and it only cost a couple of lives and Cisco's self-respect. And that is a pretty light price to pay to be fair, at this point, hopefully end a war. Hi, Del.
I would. I guess. I wonder if I think it's really, when you think of cost benefit analysis, the one that Garrick makes where he's saying that certain lives and somebody's dignity is down the toilet, but hey, we save the Alpha Quadrant. That's in that moment, it appears that's the case. Because it's a TV show and they have to keep the plot going, and this pivotal episode is the establishment of that allyship. It has to work out. But in real life, that would never be a guarantee. And there's no guarantee that it wouldn't backfire. There's no guarantee that there's no one else that has any access to the truth. Who knows if, like, that log is really deleted? Like, there's a domino effect that could have been set in motion by doing this, because you don't get to control the sort of outcome of murder, really. It's just that Cisco had Garrick on his side, and that was his golden ticket to getting away with this. So
yeah, I absolutely think the ends justify the means on this one.
Yeah, in this case, anyway.
You're right. I hadn't really thought about it as there's no guarantee that this is even going to work, but I think you have to try when you realize I think it goes back to like Julian and the augments coming up with like that plan that says, we're going to fail. We're not going to win this. And despite Cisco shutting them down and being like, no, 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 we've got to try no matter what.
Right.
I think he's got it in the back of his mind that, yeah, something else, another factor has to enter into the equation, which is
Yeah.
the
I
Romulans.
also wonder, like, had they exhausted all avenues of diplomacy with the Romulans before attempting this? Had they made any inroads? Like, did Garrick, with all his connections, has 0 people in the Romulan Senate that he could whisper at and be like, "Hey, this is getting kind of fucked up right now." Like I just wonder, is it really down to the murder of this one guy? And I wonder, like, I was on the edge of my seat for it because I really wanted just the tube to be the key, the forged sort of holodeck thing, to be the thing that solves the issue, but it's a fake.
I literally just watched that and I can't think of, like, I'm trying to keep hearing in my head as an ophthalmologist, like, that's not right. That has something to do with the eyes. I do like the fact that apparently it can't be altered in any way. Like, good on your security there. Which also kind of makes me wonder if when Cisco deleted his log at the end, if it could be reconstituted at all.
Right. Because they, like, the 2 people that are killed, one of them is a professional forger and the other is a Romulan senator. And the thing is, like, there's this assumption that that is acceptable measure of collateral damage, but I'm sure those people, while their values were not necessarily in alignment with Starfleet, which I guess is how they justify it, they may have had children, they may have had wives, who the hell knows? Like, I see why they made this decision, but is it the absolute best decision? I don't know.
Interesting side note, I've been watching the classic Quantum Leap for a couple of months with my family, and in the final, I just finished it this week, and Stephen McHattie, who plays the Romulan senator here, also is in the final episode of Quantum Leap, and he's the the other leaper that it turns out to be Al's uncle, who's like all stooped up. Yeah, Stoppa. That's the same. It doesn't look like him either. I'm like, what? That's Stephen McHattie? Yep.
That's some amazing makeup.
Damn. Yeah, right. And this was like 5 years after that, and it doesn't. They don't look like the same person.
Not even
good actor.
Steve.
I love watching sort of like 80s, 90s sort of sitcoms and seeing the Trek actors sort of make cameos in God knows how many things. I saw Murder, She Wrote and saw Cisco's father, Benjamin, in Jury. That was really nice.
Nice.
Gannon's got a good question. Would Picard be able to orchestrate a lie like Cisco given the same stakes?
Picard wouldn't do it.
No, it depends on which Picard we're talking about. Picard in that time, like, on the D or on the E, no. Picard circa Star Trek Picard, maybe.
Didn't he wear Romulan makeup to go visit Spock for unification? So he's not entirely unfamiliar with going into Kiva, but I think he would really struggle with the murder thing. I don't think he would cross that line. I don't think he would do it. He may be able to keep a secret for somebody else, but to do it himself or just be okay with it in the same way Cisco was, I don't think so.
And then to take that one step further, if it were Janeway, she would have leaned into it even harder and how can we inflict maximum damage on people while we accomplish our goals?
I think while Garrick is formulating an assassination plan to cover up all their tracks, Janeway would be in the airlock with Vreenak pressing the button. Like, it would already be over.
Starship Mine.
Right. Like, there's not like Picard and casualties do happen under
Yeah.
Picard for sure.
Hello.
Yeah, and he's not without the ability to take a life. I just wonder, in this specific scenario where the there's a bypass of diplomacy in lieu of assassination in order to establish an allyship based on a lie. I don't know if he could. I don't know if he could hold up his end of the bargain.
Well, maybe if he'd had the same casualty lists to do with.
Sometimes you want to go, Del. Sometimes.
I'm sitting in his chair right now, so.
So, what's the significance of Cisco breaking the fourth wall while laying out his log, and does it invalidate the story to delete it?
I think that's
it's almost. Oh, sorry,
go ahead.
I'm lagging. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's his way of saying, would you make the same decision? I can live with it. You know, he's sort of inviting the audience to make the same, to ask themselves, would they do the same thing as him? I don't think it invalidates it to delete the log. I think it's his way of communicating that I don't agree with what I just did, and I know it's wrong. Because if I left it here, I would get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like he knows. Obviously he doesn't know there's an audience. This isn't like a Rick and Morty situation. He doesn't know he's a TV character, but he knows that. Like, I think in a way that he knows that he's going against Roddenberry's vision, and the vision of Starfleet and the Federation, and we're just kind of a stand-in while he asks for forgiveness.
It's not a log, it's a confessional. He's in a confessional booth right now.
Yeah.
And he's just not in a church.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I dig that. I think you're right. It definitely doesn't invalidate it. I'm not a fan of stories that never really happen, but I mean, this one did happen. But it is kind of weird that you break the fourth wall, which has only been done a couple of times in 900 episodes of Trek. So to do it very prominently in an episode like this, interesting choice. I think it really does work for the nature of the content.
I also think
it's just a giant gray area.
Yeah, I think it's also just a way of letting somebody in a leadership role, such as Cisco, who is always very certain of his choices, let us in a little bit of vulnerability that maybe he's not on board with his own choices. Maybe this isn't sitting well with him. I mean, he is drinking alcohol, which is not something we see him do too often. So I don't imagine that he's happy with himself right now.
True. That's an excellent point, Del.
Yeah, actually, now that you've mentioned, I'm trying to think of other instances of him drinking. Like, in the first episode, he orders a synth ale and doesn't even end up getting it. I'm sure there are other instances of him drinking, like at Quark's or something, but I can't think of one.
And he seems to me as somebody that likes to give the impression that he's in control of himself. And I think for a captain, that's pretty important, that you don't want to seem like moody. Not that Cisco isn't very clearly human, but I think this is one moment where it's like he is deeply dysregulated about this particular thing.
Yeah.
I think we already answered the next question I had here. Sort of. I mean, there are other
Uh,
captains we can throw in, which is, would this have been believable with any other series captain? And we talked about Picard. I threw Janeway in there for fun.
I think with Michael, it would have been the decision would have been made much sooner. She's very quick to make those kind of world saving or universe saving choices without really processing it, and I think that's to Discovery's detriment, because it's just sort of like a set piece to get from one thing to another versus like really sitting with what you've done with Cisco.
To be honest, I
with-
can't see it with a couple of the newer shows. I don't believe Captain Freeman could have pulled this off at all, and absolutely not with the crew of the Protostar.
But she would have tried. Freeman definitely. This is something Freeman would have tried. But I think you're right.
Oh yeah.
And we also saw Pike during this Balance of Terror revisit, so we kind of get an answer there as far as like those kind of snap choices. Yeah, I think it was very specific to its context of the Dominion War and that need for the Romulans to ally with the Federation.
Yeah, as for Archer, I guess it depends on the day of the week you get him on. Is it post or pre or during the whole thing with the Xindi?
Also, like Dear Doctor, where Archer's like, should this race of beings be allowed to evolve, and this other one die of a curable disease? So I've seen him make weird calls about that.
That's an episode we got to add to the rotation at some point, at some time. I think we could get a lot of mileage out of that one. Because I actually agree with some bits of it for reasons.
Okay.
Right.
But not all of it. The episode's weird.
It really is. I mean, it's
But
like
I've seen like TrekRanks.com has it as one of their like top 10 Enterprise episodes. I don't like it
What
that
in the
much, but I don't
world?
think it's the bottom of the barrel either. So.
Right.
I shake my fist every time I see it. It's so enraging. But I bring that up in the context of like, how does he handle difficult decisions where there is no clear right answer? But he's taking the bigger picture into account. But again, it's like you don't actually know what that bigger picture is in either case.
Do you think the biomimetic gel that Garrick wants to bargain for the chip with is actually just a ruse, and he's already got the optolithic data rod, and he's just using that to make a bomb to blow up Vreenak's shuttle? Like Bashir warns Cisco that
right.
the gel can be used as an explosive.
That is so plausible. Was Garrick clearly several steps ahead this entire time?
I am curious, like Garrick is also a very exacting person on top of being mind gamey, and he's usually mind gamey when it's in service of a larger goal versus, I mean, unless it's like flirting with Bashir, that's just for fun. But as far as this particular mission is concerned, I wonder if he would really do something that was kind of a red herring on purpose when time is of the essence.
And I think there's a couple of red herrings in what he does. He also has Cisco, he tells him when he's prepping him, oh yeah, tell him that like, oh, a dozen good men were lost in this. But before that, he like kind of hooked Cisco with, oh oh, I lost all of my friends in the Obsidian Order trying to get this
Oh, that's
information
right,
for
yep.
you. And it's just,
Right.
it's
Okay.
all
Yeah.
kind of
I
the same
guess
thing.
it's mean like the ruses he does pull to speak to what you're talking about. I think the ruses he does pull is to make sure that Cisco remains on board for this. I question whether Garrick's remaining connections on the planet were at all killed. We only have his word. I mean, yeah,
Right.
that could definitely be a lie, but I do think it's in service of keeping Cisco's head in the game.
Yeah, because now you think about it, it's a little too convenient. Yeah, I talked to all my contacts, and they were willing to help me. They're all dead now. So we need to do something else. But, I just
And
have
they're
to
all
have this backup plan in my back pocket.
right. I also wonder if this particular person was sort of on his hit list anyway, and like the forgery guy was probably somebody he wanted taken out anyway, like Garrick, I mean.
Yeah.
He seems like he's somebody that would have those kind of machinations, but I think when it comes to like the biomimetic gel, I feel like he would have been able to get it anyway. Like I see him as somebody able to tap any resource at any time, and he knows way more than he lets on, which I think is like the crux of his character.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very true.
We don't have a ton of questions left.
I do.
Doesn't-
I am
Go ahead.
curious, like why he approached Bashir for the biomimetic gel. Like, was he just fucking with him at that point? Like, no, we can't provide that. No, it's like Bashir's already kind of under the gun because of his, genetic issue. So I don't think he, even in wartime, he would be like, yeah, here you go. I would think Garrick and all of them would know better than to ask him for that.
Well, I mean, he's the one in control of it. So if
Mhm.
Cisco wants to use it as a bargaining tool, he's got to go through Bashir whether he wants to or not.
Yeah.
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 Does Romulus working with the Federation against the Dominion bring improved relations later on?
I mean, Picard would evidence that say that the answer to that is no.
Yeah, right.
That it get that out independent of this, it gets much worse. In fact.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, they've still got a neutral zone.
Mhm.
Prodigy kids get busted for. No, not really, because they just kind of. Now that I think about it, it's kind of weird that they snuck in there and somehow the Romulans didn't notice, and then they did.
I think they just it was a sort of malicious compliance because there's a mutual benefit to allying together. And I think that's the only reason that Romulans would ever consider something like this is like an existential threat where they are completely outgunned. It's sort of like a conditional truce for the sake of a bigger problem. But down deep, they are xenophobic folks who have absolutely no interest in allying with the Federation on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
even after their well, I guess their empire didn't collapse, just their homeworld got destroyed. But
Well,
even
it
after
got
that,
supernova,
didn't.
and the Federation was like, that sucks. We're not going to help, though.
They tried, man. They tried.
Well,
We get
that's a
out of it
good
a whole new
point.
universe.
Picard tried, but then the Federation or Starfleet was like, nah, we're not doing that. And
Well,
that was season 1.
Windgrace kind of brings up a good point, which would lead me to a question of, so if that hadn't happened, if it had been the status quo and the same leadership, do you think things would have been different? Because I mean, at that point, we had Section 31 had a man in as the head of the Tal Shiar, for God's sakes. So, things may have turned out different had Nemesis not happened.
We'd all be a lot happier.
So the only other thing I have is this the best episode of Trek? And if not, and if so, why? And if not, what is?
I definitely think it's up there. I think that this episode easily takes the cake. If I was just going to like list out favorite ones, this would definitely be at the top. And for me, it's because there's no clear right or wrong. And I think that is really when you get to the meat and potatoes of what a captain is made of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if you're pushed to the brink of what you think is right and wrong? Would you go over it for the greater good? And it's justifying the means and everything. And sometimes you do it thinking that it does, and you may regret it. And like, these are the sort of things that you like, pieces of yourself that you sacrifice during war. So I think, and I don't really see a lot of, other Trek do that, except for another DS9 episode, which is like For the Uniform, or like DS9 in general is good at this type of moral, ethical quandary more than others. And I think, again, this kind of like unclear right or wrong answer is missing from New Trek. This to me is what Trek is about. What we do under pressure. Do we give in to fear, or do we embrace love and unity and care? And what do we do if neither of those are options? So,
right. Yeah, I'm not going to get that deep into it because I probably should have, but I mean, it really comes down to opinions, which of course are all subjective. I can think of other episodes I like probably more than this one, based on their small moments, or maybe just one of the storylines, the overall plot, or just that it happened to be fun. And this is not fun. Except maybe when you get into all of the machinations of Garrick, then it's kind of fun to go stumble like through his web. But I do kind of think from a subjective point of view, this probably is like the best all-around episode of Trek. I mean, it's so well performed. It doesn't drag. It's been a while since I saw it, but like from the beginning, like as soon as Cisco started recording his log, I was invested and committed to the plot. And I was sympathizing with him where he's rationalizing what he did at every step. Like the little things, like when, he's got to basically pay Quark off to keep from pressing charges against the forger. And Quark, the last thing Quark says is, he brings up Rule of Acquisition 98. Every man has his price. And that you kind of realize, like, every little thing in this episode is kind of driving me towards the end, isn't it? And I just love that. Yes, The Visitor is also a great episode.
Yeah, I see it as like masterfully paced too, but just like you said, and like it it's up there in terms of like captain defining episodes, which I think are the best ones personally. So we have with Captain Kirk, we have Balance of Terror. With Picard, we have Best of Both Worlds, or like just there's a lot of episodes where Picard is a Measure of a Man.
Ooh, good one.
Really good example of him trying to advocate for something when there's no clear answer. And also Janeway and Tuvix, things like that, where it's like this is emblematic of who this captain is, and I get all I need to know from this one episode. Like if I saw nothing else and I watched Measure of a Man, I would know who Picard is. If I watched nothing else, but I watched In the Pale Moonlight, I would know who Cisco is. So that's why I think these are the strongest.
Right.
So I really think In the Pale Moonlight, though, takes it a step further. And because it's an ensemble cast, you have all these sort of moving parts coming in. And then you have on top of that, this 7-year arc of a story that is reaching its climax. This is a huge turning point. So there's a lot of reasons that add to how amazing this is. And yeah, the performances are amazing. You see the sort of despondency in Cisco. You see Garrick in his element as an assassin. It's really just sort of takes off, hits the ground running from the very jump and never stops.
I don't think Vanessa was saying that Tuvix was a good episode, just that it's a good indicator of Janeway's character.
Yeah.
And I almost agree. I think Living Witness, it's in the top 3 for sure.
That is
of
a good
Voyager.
one.
Like, I love those episodes where it's like, I don't know if I entirely agree with what the captain did, because it forces the audience to sort of reflect on what they would have done, or if there were this character, what other choices would you have made? And I think that's really the guts of what this show's about, like having you reflect on your own ethics.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it many times. I've got a whole series that ends with this being the number 1 episode of all time in Trek. And I think why I like it, despite saying like some of its themes are kind of antithetical to what Gene Roddenberry originally started with Star Trek, but also it's like it is some of the core pieces, like a shade of gray. It's a very middle ground kind of thing. It's not good, it's not bad. It's a thing that kind of had to happen. And I love all of the layers with Garrick and the deception and like all the things that you can infer years later that you're like, oh, that's what was going on.
Yeah.
You know, like we talked about with like, did Garrick make the bomb with the stuff? Did he already have the rod? Did he even lose his friends, or is he just selling Cisco? There's layers. It's like an onion.
Like, is Cisco just a pawn in his own plan for something else completely unrelated?
Yes,
he
is.
Right. There's so many ways you could read into this. And there's so many details that you missed before and you pick up again when you watch this. There's just so much to dig through.
But there's certainly flashier episodes, even more interesting plots. But overall, I mean, just beat for beat, it there's no filler. It all works. It's so different than the rest of Trek. You just can't help but sit up and kind of take notice and like, well, that was a thing.
I love this style. I love this style where we just have one a character as the focal point. They sort of do that with Data's Day a little bit. But to a more comedic effect. Whereas with this, it's obviously not funny and very intense. And this is the way I would have liked Conspiracy on TNG to play out, instead of like the hijinks that ensued, where there's just bugs and antennas sticking out of necks. I would have liked to have seen Picard encounter this and his perspective of the sort of like compounding realization that the Federation and Starfleet is being taken over by bugs or whatever. Like it was his investigation that led to that discovery, versus like, I have something to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you broadcast on its communicator. Yeah.
It would make that picture much different.
Yeah.
Federation's at stake and you're learning to dance.
I love this.
And there's your bugs.
Oh gosh.
That like this is another episode that we could like probably dive into and get a lot of meat out of. Holy crap, Conspiracies at that. I mean, it's even kind of a two-parter. It's taken off an earlier thing from the season, which was almost really interesting.
it's so like of its time too, because you had movies with that dabbled in these sort of practical effects as well.
Yep.
And the way that it ended is just so completely unhinged. Some guy explodes. You don't see that kind of stuff on Trek too much. So this one sticks out too, just for in a different way and not always for the better. But I think the episode would have benefited from focusing on Picard's perspective, similar to the way that Cisco is focused on in Under the Pale Moonlight, where it's like he is walking through these decisions, trying his best, but it's really just not what he wanted. And the realization at the end that it's not even close to how he hoped that this would turn out, and yet he got the outcome that he wanted. That was really a gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's. I was looking for.
They're terrified of
right
lesbians.
picture.
I swear. Picard season 3. It's like, what relationship between Seven and? It's like.
But Justice, which, like I said, I was just watching.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all over the place.
Right.
It was like
this
a very
at the end of
sexual
season
orgy on the
1?
verge of breaking out the whole time.
That's from the end of season 2.
Yeah, it's like that's it.
You get one, and we're not going to even explain what happened in season 3. They're just
they're nowhere near each other the whole season.
All right. Anybody have any other questions about In the Pale Moonlight before we get out of here?
Okay, so we agree on it being the best episode, but do you think you can live with it?
I can live with it. Can't I?
As I held that pose as long as I could.
I mean, I think the thing is, you can justify anything in your head. You can make what you did justified because of the outcome he got. He got what he wanted, so it's like how we got there doesn't matter. Just because I'm going to erase it, and no one's ever going to find out. And the only person who knows is someone that no one believes anyway. So.
So
I
is
heard
there
something
even
somewhere said the part of your brain that's responsible for, I believe, conscious thought doesn't show activity until after you act. So you don't ever actually decide to do anything. You just rationalize what you've decided to do after the fact. But to be fair, that wasn't a Dilbert comic, so.
So if we all agree it's best, is there even a point in doing an out of 10? I guess sort of. I give it a 10.
Yeah, solid 10.
Yes.
10s.
10s all around. All right. Next week, I'm thinking we're going to watch some short treks and come back and talk about those. Not the very short treks. Those can go to another dimension.
No, I'm good on those.
But I don't think there has been enough said about the short treks. We hardly talk about them. They are just, some of them are really freaking good. And there's one in particular that I like. It hits me hard every freaking time I watch it.
It's the trouble with Edward, isn't it?
I do like that one. I know some people don't. And
I heard it was sort of like a meta commentary on what the chaos of season 1's writing.
That's yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. Because that writer's room and producer's room got weird, and then got completely turned on its head. # bring back Brian Fuller. All right, well, we'll come back with that next week. Thanks, you guys, for coming and chiming in with me and talking about In the Pale Moonlight. And thanks all of you for tuning in. So until next time, live long and